Hello. What we've got here are some of the weapons carried and used by British light infantry soldiers during the American Revolution. We've got a succession of weapons starting with your most basic and the primary weapon, moving into more specialized arms. So the first thing that we've got right here is standard British infantry musket of the Revolutionary War period, the 1769 pattern, Brown Bess.
It's also referred to occasionally as a Shortland pattern British infantry musket or a second model. Basically, 1769 pattern British infantry musket is your standard musket carried by most of the soldiers in the company, and it's basically shorter than the previous British infantry musket, which would have been your sometimes referred to as a Longland pattern British infantry musket or first model British infantry musket. These mostly carried by soldiers of the light infantry companies during the war.
These weapons, they were fairly new, entering service in 69 and after, and it is usually the light infantry companies that first receive these weapons. There's orders to specifically mentioning the new short arms for light infantry being drawn in Ireland by the 40th and many other units that were there prior to coming to North America. As a standard British infantry weapon, it takes a socket bayonet, allowing it to be loaded and fired at the same time. And it's a fairly accurate weapon as well. Its effective range is over 250 yards. It has killing power at that distance. Its accuracy decreases after about 150 yards, but it is still a very effective weapon at those ranges. Of course, massed fire from a battalion line of infantry makes it most effective, but the light infantry were firing singly and in pairs, picking targets, and this weapon proved very effective in that way. Moving on from that, we've got kind of a mini version of that. This is a sergeant's carbine of about the same period. And these are carried by non-commissioned officers, sergeants of the Grenadier and Light Infantry companies, largely as kind of a badge of rank rather than as a primary combat arm. They carried ammunition, they were capable of using them for their own defense, but their jobs are to superintend and pay attention to what's going on with the men around them, not to be putting rounds down range. So it can be used for that. It has, of course, a socket bayonet that goes with it, but it's mostly that badge of rank. Now, battalion company sergeants were supposed to be carrying halberds, a pole arm, but routinely throughout the war, those halberds go into storage, and battalion company sergeants are equally likely carrying carbines just like this. You also see these used by artillerymen as a backup weapon if they are no longer serving on the gun.
With a lot of these weapons too, especially with the 40th having been stationed in Ireland before the war, a lot of their specific firelocks are coming from Dublin Castle, which you can see stamped on some of these locks here.
And finally, we've got kind of our collective favorite and a real specialty weapon, and that's the 1776 Tower contract rifle. Now, it's kind of popularly assumed that rifles are like the domain of American soldiers, the long rifle and, the fringed hunting shirt. But the British, recognized that rifles are incredibly effective and important. And it's just a difficult weapon to manufacture in mass, where a musket can be cranked out a little bit more. But with the prevalence of rifles in North America, the British realized they do need to be able to counter that effectively. And this is the primary answer to that. These weapons were made up in both England, 800 of them were made in England, and an additional 200 were made on contract in Germany. And they were here in North America by 1777. They were issued out kind of as needed. We know that the light infantry companies operating on the Philadelphia campaign, like the 40th, each seem to have drawn 2 of these, possibly we don't know how they distributed them within the company. Perhaps they went to the best shots. And there were also an entire troop of the 16th Light Dragoons that was equipped with these rifles, and they're issued to Loyalist Corps. By the end of the war, the Queen's Rangers has a rifle company that are carrying these contract rifles. It's a pretty ingenious weapon. Short, has that classic octagon barrel, a very typical kind of British ordnance lock. It would have been assembled at the Tower. but the barrel is really where it comes into its own. One, as a rifle, it has sights, and this actually has a flip sight. So you have 3 different settings that you can use. It has an integral swivel rammer, unlike the kind of standard pipe rammer of the musket and the carbine. This one just pulls out and swivels over the barrel to drive the ball home. Keeps you from losing it. The barrel itself is held on by 3 keys rather than the pins, classic of British weapons. And the barrel is actually hinged, so if you put the rammer in the barrel and pull the pins out, you can swivel the barrel off, leaving the back end of the breech in place, which makes it much easier to clean and maintain. These seem to have proven effective and popular. They were used throughout the war after their introduction, making that kind of first attempt at giving greater accuracy to the common British soldier. Of course, it would ultimately be superseded famously by the Baker rifle during the Napoleonic Wars. Because the rifle is that octagon barrel, it doesn't take a bayonet. So the riflemen seem to have been equipped with short swords, hangers of some kind, perhaps of a regimental pattern, perhaps what was available, to give them a means of defending themselves in close quarters situations, or if the rifle fails to work and they get into a little bit of trouble. It's possible that the 2 riflemen would have also been matched up with someone carrying a smoothbore weapon, and therefore able to provide them a little bit of greater coverage. So these weapons were the primary ones that were carried throughout the war by the light infantry, but by British soldiers at large, and really formed the backbone of that British Army as far as their general weaponry went and their warfighting ability.